Hi, friend. Today, we finally get a where are they now for a character. We discover that the Enterprise has both a barbershop and a gift shop. And we ask the question, what was the point of this episode again? Hang with us. Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking season 4, episode 11, entitled Nothing of Consequence Happens. It's actually called Data's Day. It's written by Ronald D. Moore and directed by Robert Weimer. Data records a day in his life for Commander Bruce Maddox, that asshole from the Daystrom Institute who wanted to take him apart. And he includes observations on Chief O'Brien's wedding and the mystery of a Vulcan ambassador. Also, there's some dancing involved. That's the episode. What are your initial thoughts on this?
So my initial thoughts was like, yay, this is the O'Brien wedding. Like, Data's one of my favorite characters, but that doesn't mean all of the Data heavy episodes are my favorites. They're not at all. Like, some of them are great and some of them are like, meh. And this is definitely one of the meh ones. So I remembered this episode being about the wedding, and I remember it being called Data's Day, and I remember being confused about that.
Sounds like it's Keiko's day, actually.
It's really the O'Brien's day. Like, yeah. I don't know. But whatever. So I was excited because I remember it was about their wedding, and I remember it being just like very sweet. And, but I didn't remember really the plot or anything else that happened. So this, similar to last week's episode, this was kind of like a new episode for me, as far as I vaguely remember some stuff, but I didn't remember any details. And it turns out you don't really need to remember any details. That's why there's really not a lot of details. So what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were, I hate this episode because nothing really happened.
Was that your initial thought or was that your final thought though?
It was both. It really was my recurring thought where I was like, and yet nothing is happening. It's, you know what? I do like that there's the follow up with like the Commander Maddox thing from Measure of a Man, where he's like, fine, I'm not going to take you apart piece by piece, Data, but I do want like to stay in touch with you.
Was that guy Commander Maddox?
That was Commander Maddox, one of the most punchable faces of Starfleet.
That's interesting because Commander Maddox becomes Dr. Bruce Maddox in Picard. And he's like a big character who is like the father of cybernetics.
Oh my God, that's this guy. Oh, dots connected. Anyway, so I do like that there's the follow through with that, where he's like, hey, this is a where are they now? Like, which we rarely ever get in TNG.
Yes.
Where it's like, now we know he's still at the Daystrom Institute working on cybernetics.
He's still doing his thing.
He's still doing his thing. And Data is sending him like his observations.
Him, like he said he would.
Like he said he would, which I thought was kind of cool. Now, as we actually opened the episode, there was something that caught my attention. Data is commanding the night shift because he doesn't need to sleep. And I don't know if you noticed this, but the lights are a lot darker. And when Riker comes in and he's like, begin day watch, like the lights come up. And Gene Roddenberry made it a point of saying, I want the humans aboard the ship to feel the difference between night and day, because the light is always the same. It's always pitch black out because you're in space. You don't know if it's day or night. So this was like a little way to not only let the audience member know what's going on, but creating a world in which the humans would also like be able to sort of sense the passage of time through that, just a change in lighting. It's really neat.
Yeah, I noticed that. And I thought that's different. And that was pretty cool. And I totally understand that whole thing of having those circadian rhythms kind of managed. However, I will point out again that they now live in space. So they don't have to be stuck on what the sun is doing around the Earth. Like that has no bearing on them. Also, as you were talking, I thought, yeah, this is really nice for the humans, but what about all the non-humans on the ship?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Like maybe they don't need the circadian rhythm situation. So when this episode starts and before the day watch begins and it's still kind of dark on the bridge, Riker comes to relieve Data saying, you're the father of the bride, so it's a special day. So I'm here 15 minutes early.
Is Lal back?
I know, right? I know. I thought that was weird. I was like, father of the bride? Since when is he the father of the bride for Keiko? By the way, this is our first time meeting Keiko ever. So
is it really? Oh, you're first right.
Time ever meeting Keiko. So when he was like, you're the father of the bride, I was like, father of the bride? Did he just say that? Who the hell
is the bride? Yeah.
Yeah, but he did just say that. So he's just like, well, thank you, sir. And he kind of goes and as Andrea said, although she may have said this off camera, This is just like a diary. This is just Data's like diary entry.
This is just sort of like a journal entry of his day, which is why it's called Data's Day. Yeah. It's just very much like, dear diary, this is what happened today, which is why I feel like there's really no plot. And they just sort of threw in this Vulcan Romulan situation, which takes like 2 seconds to wrap up. So that, and actually I did read that the writers did put that in there. So it felt like the story did this like episode, this week's episode
had a little more meat on the bone.
Had a plot at all, because otherwise it was plotless. It was just like, here's just what my day was like.
And here's the thing though, if we think about even last week's episode where we had these 2-dimensional beings that trapped the Enterprise and were pulling them towards this cosmic string that was going to crush them in this black hole like gravity.
Super cool.
That's also one of Data's days. Like that's a day in in his life. That would have been a super interesting day. We could have done that day.
Yeah.
The fact that they premised this episode as like, oh, it's just a day in the life of Data. Data has some really cool, epic, crazy, amazing days. Like seeing him figure out that waveform, seeing him work with Geordi, seeing him work with Troy, seeing him talk to Picard.
Yeah. You know which, if I were Dr. Maddox, you know which day I would want to really listen to is the one where he meets the motherfucking Borg Queen.
Right.
The day of like Miles and Keiko's wedding. Who gives a fuck about their wedding?
Yeah.
Like who cares?
So, like literally any other day that Data has experienced would have been more like right to Maddox worthy than this day. I mean, this is a big day for the O'Briens, but not the biggest day in the world for Data.
Maybe it's just more of the like emotional, like there's a lot of emotions happening. So that's where like I'm stuck at.
But again,
that happens all the time anyway.
It happens all the time. So again, with last week's episode, we could have seen Data talking to Troy about her loss and her grief and Data trying to figure that out. There was emotions there, the blowing up on people. He could have asked people, I'm curious, Doctor, why was Troy yelling at you a minute ago? Like there's so many opportunities. So if we're going to just take a day out of the life, this still could have been a typical standard episode easily.
Yes,
just
it really could have
perspective. Or even there was an episode, I think it was called Instance of Command, where Data goes down to that planet that the Shelley accident can destroy.
Yes.
That was a day in Data's life. And that was a dope episode. So I feel like
he like commandeered a whole fucking village. Yeah.
To save people.
This is why I feel like I hate this episode, because I'm like, ugh, every day is a day in the life of Data's life.
Yeah. So just that point of like, oh, it's a really boring day to show it's a regular day. His regular days aren't that boring. So there's really no excuse to write this episode. But in any case, we have it. So here we go. So Data is the father of the bride, and he's going to be talking. He kind of says in his diary entry that he's going to be describing human emotional responses and his understanding of them, because he's written this algorithm, he's written this program in his brain to help him understand how humans are experiencing emotions and predict exactly how they're going to respond depending on what he says or doesn't say. So he's like, okay, I've got this new program. It's going to be great. And at some point we go to commercial. Don't really care why. There's no drama here.
Remember a couple of weeks ago, we discovered that we needed a bum scale for when to cut to credits, and Captain Picard goes on vacation is a 0 bum one. This is like a -10 bum scale before we cut to credits. Like she does say, Keiko does say like she doesn't want to get married, and that's the bum, but it's like, but really, are we supposed to be really emotionally invested in like the feelings of a woman we just met 1 minute ago? Like, that's a -10 bum.
If this was like Troy and Riker and they were actually going to get married, which would have been like so exciting. It'd be like, oh my gosh, they're finally getting together, and forget his career. They want to be together. And then she's just like, nope, I can't do it. You'd be like, what? How could you call this off? This is what you've wanted all these years. But yeah, I agree that Keiko's getting married and doesn't want to get married, which is whatever, because we've never met her before. There's no emotional investment.
So why do we care? Yeah.
And of all people, she's getting married to O'Brien, who we don't have very much emotional investment in either, but she can't be getting married to any of the other bridge crew because we see them all the time. And we'd be like, why don't we see Keiko? So in any case, we meet Keiko.
If I were to give like a wedding toast for Miles, I'd be like, Miles, you're pretty good at pushing some buttons sometimes. That's about all I know about you. Anyway, good luck. Like we're not super invested.
So yeah, we're not invested in this relationship because we didn't know about it before this episode. But I will say when he goes to Keiko's quarters and he's kind of talking to her, first of all, Keiko is just so pretty. Like I think this actress is so beautiful.
And the hair design they do on her
and the chopsticks that are kind of like in it.
Yes, so the hair chopsticks. Yes.
One of the things I thought though, like immediately, which I don't remember having this thought ever before in watching the show, is I was like, yay, another Asian crew, like an Asian crew member. I don't remember the last time we had an Asian person on the show. I feel like it was season 1. Like Mr. I don't remember. Mr. Singh,
who got zapped by the electricity monster.
Who was murdered, but then there was also the Asian guy who pulled out all the chips in the Naked Now.
Oh yeah, that guy. He got airlocked.
Yeah, he got airlocked. We don't know what happened to him. But I was like, yes, an Asian crew member. Woo! And I don't think we've seen Nurse Nawagata or whatever her name is.
Ogawa.
I don't think we haven't seen her.
We have not seen.
We
haven't seen Nurse Ogawa yet. No, not yet.
Okay,
you're right. Like Keiko is, and she becomes like, she's not a series regular, but she becomes this like recurring guest.
Yes.
On the show. And,
like
yes, like O'Brien, we see a recurring, non-white character. And it's like, so great. This is super cool. Yeah. There's like a smidge more representation. Yeah.
Yeah. There's literally one drop more than there was before. And I'm like, I'm here for it. I was just like so excited to see an Asian person. And so then we get a little more detail to find out that Data is the one who introduced Keiko and O'Brien. When, how, where, we don't know. Doesn't matter who.
Doesn't matter who.
He introduced them, and I guess Keiko has no family or something. So Data is going to be giving her away as the father of the bride. And I think that that's really sweet and such a special place of honor, especially for Data, who doesn't have any family at all besides his crazy freaking brother, who he's continually having to dismantle. So like, and his father, who's also pretty crazy, and his mother, he doesn't know exists yet. Like Data's very isolated as well. So for him to be able to be a part of a wedding, and such an important part of a wedding, I think is really beautiful.
That is really beautiful. Also, as Maddox, that would have been a super interesting day in the life of like, well, so I had to dismantle my brother again. Like, wouldn't that be more interesting? It's like, Data, send me more information on that. But
Maddox would meet his match with Lore. Like Lore would have a field day with that guy.
Lore would take Maddox apart piece by piece with no interest in putting him back together.
Seriously. So Keiko explains to Data that she does not want to get married. And
like out of the blue. And
it's very clear to us as viewers that she has cold feet. She's getting nervous. She's getting scared. She's like second guessing herself. Which I think, I'm not married. I've never been anywhere near being married, but I have been a bridesmaid many, many times. I would expect that that's a kind of normal feeling for people to be like, oh my gosh, this is a really big decision. Maybe I've made a huge mistake. Like I can expect that people could be nervous about that. And so she's feeling nervous, but Data's reaction is just kind of like, oh, is this going to make you happy? Because I just want to make you happy. I'm your friend. I want to make you happy. And so when she's like, yes, this will make me happy. Not getting married will make me happy. Data's like, okay, great. If not getting married will make you happy, then I am here for it. And then Keiko says, but I don't want to talk to Miles directly. So I want you to go tell him that I don't want to marry him today, which is their wedding day.
Nope.
Which is
Keiko.
Ridiculous. It's childish.
Keiko. No, it's and you know what? And you're right. And Data does go over to Chief O'Brien. He's like, good news. Keiko has made a decision to increase her happiness. She's decided not to go forward with the marriage. And O'Brien is like, of all the childish, insufferable, immature. And I was like, yep. And that one too. Yep.
Agreed.
That's also,
Agreed.
True. And that one also is true. How do you decide to not go through with this marriage the day of the fucking rehearsal, which is typically in the United States, the day before the wedding, and you don't want to talk to your fiance directly about none of that checks out. This is all a huge mistake, girl. What are you doing?
Yeah. And I thought that was really weird because I thought the fact that she's asking Data to tell O'Brien that she doesn't want to marry him was really bizarre, because if you're going to marry this person, you should be able to talk to this person directly about anything. Even if it's like, honey, I've changed my mind. I don't want to get married. You should be able to say that to them so they can be like, oh, it's just cold feet or like what. So you could have a conversation, but to send a messenger seemed really bizarre.
I feel like at that point, Miles O'Brien has dodged a bullet, because if she's not willing to talk to him directly about this, imagine some other stuff in life she's going to want to pass the buck on. I'd be like, you know what? Okay, if this is how you feel, let's not do this. And great. I'm going to find myself somebody who can talk to me about stuff like this.
Right. That's so then ridiculous. O'Brien hears this message from Data and storms off. And Jordy kind of whispers to Data, next time, maybe let me be the bearer of the good news. Right. And Data is just so confused because he's like, shoot, my program isn't working. And unfortunately, that's kind of a thing you learn to pick up, the emotional intelligence that Data is maybe doomed to never totally get. Yeah. So in the meantime, on the other side of the ship, we've got a visiting ambassador, Ambassador T'Pel of Vulcan. And I swear every Vulcan woman is named T'Pel.
You know what? Vulcans don't go in for fanciness. Okay. That's about as fancy as they want to get.
So they go to meet her in the transporter room and she is just super rude. Like Data goes to get her and she's just like, I will speak with your captain, and just storms off. And I was like, I don't remember Vulcans being this rude, but I don't know, maybe
not. Well, but I also thought Data is the perfect person to greet her and not be bothered at all by her reaction. Because if it were Riker, we'd get like blue-eyed side look, we get
some side eye.
Yeah, we'd get some blue side eye, and like Data was like, okay, right this way. Like it was like, no problem at all. Yeah, no problem at all.
So I was like, that was rude, but whatever. Because again, I didn't really remember anything about a Vulcan in this episode. So I was like, whatever. So next scene, we see a Bolian barber cutting Geordi's hair.
It's our first time seeing Mott.
This was great. This is our first time seeing a Bolian barber or a barbershop at all on the Enterprise.
Yes. And also what amounts to a gift shop when like Worf and Data are looking at like replicators. Yeah, I was like, you guys have fucking gift shops? Like that's so, because I guess your food replicator isn't going to make a stuffed animal or whatever. Like there was that family getting a stuffed animal for their kid. And I was like, oh, cool. Stuffed animals are still a thing. But yeah, it was like a gift shop terminal or something. It was really weird.
Yeah, that was like the scene right after this. So we get to see 2 new places on the ship that we've never seen before, which I thought was really fun. And one of the things that happens during the barbershop situation is that the barber and Geordi are kind of like teasing each other and kind of joking and laughing. And the barber's like, you're in here for another haircut. Weren't you just in here? And Geordi's like, if you would have done it right the first time, I wouldn't have to be in here again. And they're just kind of barbing at each other, like in a friendly way. And Data's like, I think I can get in on this. And so he says something to Geordi where he's like, yes, I will have that ready, you lunkhead, or something like that. Just some random thing. And Geordi's like, lunkhead? And he's like, yes, I am experimenting with friendly insults. And it's like, I don't think that experiment's working.
Don't try it on the captain.
Yeah, he's like, don't try it. He's like, yes, indeed, I will not try. And I would also say maybe don't try it on anyone but Geordi. I think Geordi's the only one who'd be like, haha, lunkhead. Other people would be like, Data, is there something wrong with your programming? Like, what is going on? And I don't know if you noticed this in this scene because you might have been just rolling your eyes really hard at the whole episode, but there was a woman in the back who had this crazy alien makeup.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes. And the barber had like a wand and was changing her hair color. And as a woman who's changed my hair color,
that's what he was doing.
Yes. Yeah. So he was waving it around. And as he passed a few times, if you go back and rewatch that scene, Data kind of does like a double take because her hair goes from like orange to like fire red or something, or like brown to fire red.
I totally missed it because I wasn't looking at her hair. I was looking at the wand and I was like, what's it doing? Yeah. And I was looking at her hairline and like her, she kind of had these like big, like sort of like big lumps on her, like big lumps of hair that kind of created almost like a cone shape, but her scalp was up really high in certain places. Really, and you could
really
see she had a lot of makeup prosthetics on her face, but you couldn't see her face. You could only see the side, like a little bit of the side. Of face. So I was so curious about that woman. I was like, what's the makeup that they did? What does she look like? But maybe they didn't finish that look.
I was loving that hair wand because I've colored my hair before, and I actually thought of this when I was watching this. I was like, I am naturally I have like medium dark brown hair, and I like last summer I loved it so much. I was like blonde and it was gorgeous and I loved it, but it was like $200 a month to maintain it because you have to go in like every 4 weeks for like to tone it and touch it up and make sure it doesn't get all like orangey and brassy and all this stuff. And I was like, not only is that super expensive, but it's really damaging for your hair to keep like bleaching it and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, to be able to just like change your hair color with the wave of like a little Star Trek wand. And then if you don't like it, which I have had this happen where they've done my color and I'm like, oh, that is not the color I was looking for. There's nothing you can do about it. It's like, we'll come back in a few weeks and we'll try to like adjust it. With that, you could just like, and like have it go back to what it was or something different. Or just, I was like, oh my God, that's some technology I really want to like get on top of.
So you heard it here first, folks. Like if you've got a Kickstarter campaign to create this hair changing wand, we will donate to it. So next scene, we are in this gift store, which at first I didn't know what this was. I was like, is this a lab? Like I didn't recognize this set at all. So I was trying to figure out what's going on. Why is there a family back there? What's Worf doing? And then I saw the little teddy bear like show up on the thing. And then Worf.
It's a gift shop.
It's a gift shop, which I guess makes a lot of sense. Or it's a store. It makes a lot of sense that there would be a store, I guess, because there's a bunch of people. Why wouldn't there be a store? But there's also no money. So you can just make whatever you want. I don't know.
See, that's that thing. We're like, we're watching a gift store scene or like a gift shop or something like a little shopping area.
Like mm-hmm.
And it would make sense that that would be there. And also it's season 4, episode 11. And we've never even thought that there needed to be one before.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you guys just replicated whatever the hell you needed like regularly. Like now you have like and it's not even a gift shop, like where there's things on the shelves.
Right,
it's just like
transporter pads is what it looks like.
Transporter pads, but like a quarter of the size and kind of on like a little tabletop. So you just pump it in and like a stuffed animal rabbit like comes out and you're like, okay. And you just take it and walk away. And I was like, that's so weird. But what's cool is they have a little screen that you could like toggle through like all the selections that they had and it would replicate that thing for you, which come on.
Yes, so please. Cool. I will also take one of those. That was that was really
another
neat.
Kickstarter we need. Totally.
And they're going to pick a gift. And what I really liked about this scene is that Worf was going to buy some glasses, like some beautiful champagne flutes or something.
Yeah, champagne flutes, yeah.
Because he said, my human parents give this at weddings all the time. This is like a human custom or whatever. And Data just says, and actually before Data says this to Worf out loud, he says in his diary entry that I always feel like that Worf is a kindred spirit to me because we're both orphans and both of us are kind of outsiders in this human's world. Which I never thought of the two of them as having anything in common until he said that. No. And so he says out loud to Worf, well, I've observed that when you give a gift at something like a wedding, it should be a gift that represents who you are. It's your gift to them. And he was saying these glasses don't remind me of you at all.
And then it was like a glass duck like or something. Maybe? Yeah. And it was like,
like a swan shaped ashtray. I don't really know what, or paperweight. I don't know.
You know what? It was 1991. And let me tell you, I was 8 years old in 91, I want to say. And let me tell you, that's the kind of shit my parents had around their house. Like a glass swan to put like your rings and stuff in, like in the little like ashtray looking portion. You like put your rings and like your keys or your whatever there. It's like, what the fuck do I need a glass swan for? Okay, whatever.
I can guarantee that my house never contained a glass swan. We had such different childhoods. So funny. But yeah, and I thought that was really like, I appreciated that Data's saying like, you need to give something that represents you. And then I was like, what's Worf going to give them, some batlets or something? I don't know. But that's why they were struggling. That's why they were struggling.
Batlets. Yeah.
Glass batlets. I literally just bought a pair.
Ashtray.
I just bought a pair of batlets earrings that I've been wanting for months. I bought them for my birthday batlets. My birthday's next week. So I was like, you know what? I've been like, I wanted to buy those batlets and I didn't buy them because I said, where will I wear batlets to? Like, where will I go with those?
Anywhere.
And that's what I decided. Anywhere. First of all, we're in lockdown, so it doesn't really matter what I wear.
Yep.
But if I go outside, why not look cool in my batlets? So like, I could totally see them getting some batlet earrings for Keiko.
Yay!
Yeah. So, anyways, so that happens, and I thought
earrings for Keiko.
I would.
It would be like a hair chopstick batlet thing that she could like put in her hair,
and then also take out and stab somebody if they got on her nerves.
Yeah. Well, she's a botanist, so she could take like a cutting of a plant and then stick it back in her hair.
That would totally be a Klingon thing to do, though.
Now we
have a weapon in your hair and like. Yeah, that'd be cool. So anyways.
Either way, it's better than a fucking swan made out of glass. Utility.
So now Data goes to Beverly to teach him to dance so he can learn how to dance for the wedding, because Worf mentions like the thing that really hurts me about weddings is not so much the gift giving, but it's the dancing. And Data's like, dancing ? So he goes to ask Beverly, and Gates McFadden really is a professional dancer, right? Wasn't that your like background
professional
research?
Dancer and a very well-known choreographer in Hollywood. So when they do actually do their dancing scene, she choreographed the entire thing. And that really was her dancing.
And you can tell it's her. You can tell it's a stunt double being Data, but you can tell it's her doing the moves. And I was like, okay, because she could have had a stunt double too if she wanted to, but she looked amazing.
But she would like dance better than the stunt double for sure. And like Data, so Brent Spiner did do a lot of the dancing, but for the overhead shots, he didn't feel like he didn't feel confident enough in his dancing ability. So they had a stunt double for that. And then for like the part where they spin like little corkscrews, but everything else was Data, and absolutely everything from top to bottom was Beverly. And I love that. Like Beverly's like, dancing, you say? Let me get in there. Like, I'm sure they wrote that bit for her because she was a famous choreographer.
That's what I thought. They wrote this for her the same way they wrote in like just like little quirks about different characters.
Yes.
That they pulled from the actual actors. I was like, I wonder if they wrote this for her because she was very resistant to it. Beverly was like, I don't want to be known as the dancing doctor. I don't want people to know that I dance or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, pretty sure they wrote this in just so that Gates McFadden could like dance. And
Could be the dancing doctor. Yeah.
And I don't remember, and maybe you can catch me on this, but I don't remember her ever dancing before or after this episode. It's like the one time they get that in.
Yeah, this was like totally for her. I feel like the holodeck scene with Patrick Stewart riding the horse.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Patrick Stewart, if I recall correctly, is quite like a horseman. So they wrote that for him. It's like, let's write little bits that we get right from like something that these actors actually do very well and can kind of shine. So I thought
definitely
really
the Shakespearean stuff is all.
Oh my God.
All Sir Patrick Stewart. Like that's his training.
Completely.
They jumped into that every single like holodeck session that he's in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Besides horseback riding. So just to wrap up this whole dance thing, because the actual learning to dance happens later, but they go into the holodeck and they do a bunch of tap dancing. And I was thinking to myself, tap dancing? Who does tap dancing at a wedding? And then at the end of their lesson, Data says, thanks, now I'm ready for the wedding. And then Beverly's like, oh, wait, you didn't tell me you wanted to learn to dance for a wedding. You just said you want to learn to dance, which is so funny because when I think, I'm a Black woman. So when somebody says I want to learn how to dance, I immediately think hip hop. I don't immediately think tap. But it could be any kind of dance. Mm-hmm. And the context is so important. Like the fact that it's a wedding means it's going to be a very specific type of dance and it's probably not going to be tap. Yes. So basically that whole scene was just so that Gates McFadden could dance, which was wonderful to watch. But really had nothing to do with anything because that wasn't even the kind of dancing that he needed and whatever. So Beverly did end up teaching him how to slow dance. And that was actually kind of sweet. But it also I
did love his horrible, like, smiley face.
That big, weird grin.
It was like a serial killer smile. I was like, geez, Louise, Data.
It looked just like the Joker. Totally.
Yeah, it really did.
Totally. So the scene was sweet, but also it felt to me like that episode, was it the Outrageous Okana, where Data's learning about humor? Yes. In the holodeck, and you're just like, please stop. Yep. Please stop. Yep. Just don't do this just make it stop. So
please stop it.
It was great to see Gates McFadden dance because she looks amazing. But at the same time, it was very much like what's the point of this entire scene at all?
Yeah.
And the answer was nothing. So
see, that's why I said, and there's dancing this episode.
And there's dancing. Yeah. We're going to have a great hook for this episode. So at the same time, there's some fishy stuff going on with the Romulans. And, we're back on the bridge and Picard says something like, has them change their heading and tells Data to go run some scan to see if the Romulans are changing their position along the border of the neutral zone, if they're trying to coalesce their presence to be in a certain location.
Yes, because so Ambassador T'Pol's presence aboard the Enterprise is very, very secretive. She goes into meetings with Picard in the ready room, and we as an audience do not get to go with them. Normally when this happens, we get to be in on the meeting and we know what's happening and we just see them disappear and come back out and ask some very like vague questions about Romulans and then go back into like
the ready room.
Where it's like, what are you doing here? Who is this person? And like, why are we asking questions about the neutral zone, about the Romulans? What is actually happening? And at one point, Ambassador T'Pol asks Data for like classified information regarding the ship's navigational and shield programs. And Data's like, can I ask why you need to know this? Because I have the same safeguards as like the Enterprise computer, which would need like a specified reason to access this information.
And I will also be informing the captain of everything that you access and want to know.
Yes. And T'Pol is like, the information is not important. I was just testing you and you passed the test. Go away. And I was like, this
so
is a problem.
Fishy. So fishy. And Data says like, if I were human, I would be nervous, but since I don't have emotions, I'm not. But you see him kind of like looking, like double taking every time he's with T'Pol.
The minute you have to double take, that's time to like pay attention to that. Absolutely.
She is suspicious AF.
Totally.
And to the point where Data of all people is picking up on it. Like this is some serious suspicions. And you're just wondering like, what is she up to? Like what exactly is going on? So we find out a little bit later, but in the meantime, there's still the stuff going on with O'Brien and Keiko and stuff. And so at some point, Miles comes to Data's quarters and is just like, can you talk to Keiko? So again, we have this like game of telephone, but what's happening is that Keiko refuses to talk to Miles. So she delivered this message, we're not getting married, through Data, and then now is doing the silent treatment.
That's nonsense.
Because she does not want to have this conversation and she's just not going to have it. And so Data's just like, I think she should talk to Troy. I don't think I'm the person to mediate this scenario, clearly based on what happened earlier today.
Yeah.
And then Miles is like, she already did, and that didn't work. So this is your second choice. Take her to Guinan. That's what I thought. Okay, Troy didn't work. Take her to Guinan. Guinan will fix it.
Yes. Guinan will fix this.
But at no point should Data re-enter this conversation because he cannot help. And he's just like, well, but you know her. She trusts you, blah, 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 blah. So Data feels really bad. He sees how Miles is just like hurting. So he's like, okay, fine. I'll talk to her. Like maybe I can, I don't know. So he goes to talk to Keiko and he's like, you told me that if you called up this wedding, it would make you happy, but you're not happy. So I think you miscalculated. And Keiko is furious and storms off.
Get out of my life. Yeah. She storms off behind the eucalyptus or whatever. It's like, okay, Keiko, I think you're going through some shit. And you're like, last week was the denial episode. And this is also the fucking denial episode. I was like, yes. Okay, yes. Everybody's in denial. You get denial and you get denial and you get denial too. And you get heartbroken.
Yeah. And again, I felt bad for, I feel bad for Miles and I feel bad for Keiko. I don't actually feel bad for Keiko because I think she's being a dick, but also
I don't feel bad for her either.
She's coming from a place of like nerves and fear. And if she would only talk to Miles, she could get through this. Like if she would only communicate with someone who could actually help her in this scenario, she could get through it. But since she's just like putting her fingers in her ears and banging her head in the sand, like it's just dumb. It's just really dumb. And then Data's really trying to help. And he's like, should not be in the middle of this.
Yeah, no, he doesn't know what to do. He's not equipped with this. I feel bad in a sense for Keiko because she's going through some rough stuff, obviously, but she's also, I don't think anybody ever chooses to really be in denial. They just go into denial and they fall into denial. And then when you're in denial, you don't actually know you're in denial, which is really hard. So when somebody says, I think you're in denial, you're like, how dare you? I know if I'm in it or not. It's like, but actually by definition, you're denying the fact that you're denying these fucking feelings. So you wouldn't know if you're in denial, for fuck's sake. So like, I feel bad for Miles because he can't really do anything to make the situation better. Again, like you said, I think you said it last week. Denial is like a fuse. You just have to let somebody burn out and then you can hope that they want to come talk to you about it or like fix the situation or whatever. And like some denial can take a couple of days and some denial can take a couple of years. And it's like, it's just not really fair on Miles. It's not fair on Data. No. It's not even fair on Troy. Like nobody, like, come on, Keiko, get your shit together, girlfriend.
Her timing couldn't be more terrible. Like that you decide to pull this stunt, like right before you get married. It's just crazy. So then we find Data talking to Troy. So now this is like the telephone game expanded because he's like, I'm trying to help. They're asking me to help. I try to help Keiko and Miles is devastated. I try to help Miles and now Keiko is pissed. Everybody hates me and I'm just trying to help and I don't know what to do. And Troy's just like, I'm going to give you some good advice. Don't do anything. Leave them alone and stay out of it because this is a conversation between the two of them. Like they need to have this conversation. Data's just like, but wait, I thought that friendship was all about me being there for them and supporting their decisions. So that's why I'm having such a hard time because they're making different decisions all the time and I'm trying to support all of them. Yeah. And Troy's like, well, sometimes the best way to help a friend is to just leave them alone and leave them to themselves. And I thought like, well done, Troy.
I think, you know what? I think that she continues to get better and better every episode. And I really loved her advice. When someone's going through this, I have learned from experience and I am learning from experience that like when somebody's going through something like this, no matter what you do, it's going to be the wrong thing to do. So probably just best to just step back and let their fuse burn out. Yeah. And that's it. And that's really hard to do when it's really hard. It's really hard to do if it's somebody that you're close to or that you care about deeply. And it's like, well, shit, that's really tough. So Troy helped Data and she helped me too. So thank you, Counselor Troy. Actually helpful. And as in Star Trek, it was free advice. So that was great. It was, it didn't cost me anything.
I totally agree. Troy is getting better and better. Yeah. And also like, it's really hard. We talked about this in last week's episode where when someone is in that state, how do you best support them? Like, what does that look like? And I'm sure it's different from moment to moment and from person to person, but do you support them by leaving them alone? Do you support them by like getting in their face and helping them face their stuff? Do you support them by like, it's just different based on the person, where they are and the situation. And that's what makes it so hard because you want to help and there's no right way to help. And sometimes the best way is doing nothing, which feels horrible. But also trying
especially
to help.
For somebody like me who's like a doer. Yeah. I'm like, oh no,
or I don't. Fixer.
I don't know how to not
Mhm.
do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, really tough.
Yeah.
I think that both of these episodes like really deal with that kind of denial thing in such like
Mhm.
interesting different ways. I really
Mhm.
appreciate that about last week's episode and today's episode.
It's really a nice pairing, and they're still doing that couplet thing that they've been doing since season 3, where it's like an episode on fathers, an episode on fathers, an episode on leaving, an episode on leaving. So it's kind of nice, except for this time it's about grief and loss. So that's less fun, but less still fun. Part of the human experience. So totally. In the end, Data leaves them alone, and that actually works. And they do end up getting married. And that's we have some other stuff with the Romulans, but as far as the wedding goes, they do end up getting married. Picard marries them because he's the captain.
Love that.
And Geordi is like the best man for O'Brien, which is really sweet. And like, it's a beautiful wedding. I love the fact that Keiko is wearing an Asian inspired outfit.
Yes, like what would be a 24th century traditional Japanese gown and hat and like all these beautiful things. By the way, her hair is like just below shoulder length, but that braid was like down to her butt. So I was like, braid was
so great.
She got some extensions for this.
Yeah, baby. She did. I was like, woo, look at that. That braid was it was ornate and beautiful and ceremonial. Yes. Like everything else was over the top.
Yes. Did you notice too that they had like a potted plant, like a potted bonsai as well that sort of shielded her?
I didn't notice that.
I thought, what an amazing way. And this is set deck 101. You take a space that's very sterile, like 10 forward, and you make it very Japanese inspired by adding like 6 things in there. And it feels completely different. And it's so fucking cool. I will say, this drove me nuts. Data goes to apologize to Keiko for offending her. And she's like, I don't know why you're here. You should be getting dressed. And he's like, dressed? She's like, for the wedding, silly. Ha 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 ha. And I was like, no, that's another form of denial. You apologize for acting like a complete and utter asshole, Keiko. Yes, and then we can talk about this is where responsibility and accountability are really big for me. I do not pretend shit away. Mm-hmm. And I hate it when people try to do that with me too, especially if you've wronged me in some way, you better own it. And don't you dare just act like it didn't happen. So when Keiko's like, here's a carnation. Here's a carnation for your boutonniere, which I was like, ugh, yuck. You couldn't have picked like a more generic flower, but whatever. We're just
and she's a botanist of all people. She could have picked a better flower.
Girl. You could have come up with some like crazy orchid from this other planet that something. It's like, here's your $1.99 drugstore carnation. Put this in your buttonhole, which you don't have any buttons or buttonholes in your uniform. So I don't know where you would stick this in your comm badge. Like, where would that even go? Doesn't make any sense. I'm clearly ranting, but like, she doesn't own it.
Yeah, she didn't own it and she needed to. And apparently she worked everything out with Miles, which is great. But now she has some cleanup to do. She needs to go back to Data and be like, hey, I'm really sorry for putting you in that position in the first place. Like, she's got apologies all the way to the beginning.
See, this is exactly what Troy did right in last week's episode. After she got her empathic sense back, she did like a ship-wide apology tour to everybody that she wronged. And Keiko is not doing that. She's like, but it's my wedding day. So let me put on my pink holographic gown and hat and like, let's go do this thing. And I was like, no, that would be an empty ass like wedding as far as I was concerned, where I'm like, no, you acted like an asshole for no reason to me because you were dealing with like your own struggles. And that's fine. It's fine that you have your own struggles. We all do. It's not okay that you acted like an asshole, but it's even less acceptable to snap out of it and then pretend it didn't happen or not address it. That's not okay.
Yeah. So that definitely, I agree. That is one part where she needed to be like, I'm really sorry about a lot of things. And then after all of her apologies to Data, she could be like, now you want to help me get ready for the wedding? Now we can be all happy and good. Yeah. Because like we've addressed that bad behavior and we've made a plan to like not put him in that situation again. And we can move forward now. So that part was missing. That was in the outtakes. No, it wasn't. She didn't apologize. She was just like, I'm getting married, but she should have.
Yep.
And so anyways, I do love the fact that she has this beautiful, like Asian inspired dress. And I love that her culture is being represented. And I like the idea that things that are important to people's cultures still are important, even as people kind of merge and mix and collide.
Yes. It hasn't become so homogenized that it's just sort of like one world culture. Like you still have your specific
nuances and traditions and just things that are beautiful to remember.
Now, all this is happening at the same time as T'Pel is like being extra fishy and shit. And when they reach the neutral zone, the Enterprise detects a Romulan ship, and the Romulans are like, we're honored to have T'Pel aboard. Let's come aboard, and we're going to make some peace talks about something, which is again, like super fucking nebulous and unclear. Mm-hmm. And Captain Picard is like, are you sure you don't want somebody to go over there with you? This is like super sketchy. And T'Pel is like, I'm fine. And as T'Pel is beaming off, the transporter fails and her pattern breaks up and she's dead. And the Romulans are like, oh, how convenient. Somebody was going to come and do peace talks with us. And suddenly they've died. Like, that's so convenient of you. Starfleet made this happen. And of course, we know Picard would never do that. So we're like, no, give him a chance. And they do. I mean, it's sort of a throwaway plot point where like they order this like full investigation as to what happened and how this transporter a malfunction, and because it was just crazy.
It was just totally crazy. Like they went to hit the transporter beam and she disappeared, and all that was left was a few cells. Like it's just crazy. Like how did that happen?
Like how the hell did that happen?
No one can explain it because nothing like this has ever happened before. And Picard even says we have redundancies and backups. There's like 70 million redundancies to prevent anything even similar to this happening. So how did it happen at all? And there's nothing wrong with any of the equipment. There's just no explanation for this nonsense.
And it turns out there was nothing wrong with it. And they realized that like the Romulans had actually altered their transporters to mimic the Enterprise's ones. And they transported T'Pel straight off the Enterprise instead of the Enterprise beaming her off.
But they transported her the exact moment that the Enterprise was trying to transport her. So it looked like she had gotten killed in the transporter accident.
Yes. And it actually wasn't. So of course they're like, reverse course, go back to the neutral zone.
Which was sneaky too, because one of the Romulans says like, wow, you killed her before we could do these peace talks. How Romulan of you. And I thought that is totally something a Romulan would do. And then when you find out that the Romulans were behind the whole thing, you're like, nailed it.
Double
nailed
Romulan.
It. Yeah.
Romulan squared. Yeah.
That's right. So Romulan times 2. It's different.
Romulan times 2. That would be 2 Romulan, not Romulan squared, as you and I as math teachers understand all too well.
Different. It's totally different.
They're very different. It's not times 2 doesn't mean square. Okay, whatever. Can you tell we have some hangups about some math errors? Anyway, so they realize that this is, something was really fishy is going on. So Captain Picard reverses the ship and they go back to the neutral zone.
Oh, and I love that part too. Wait, that part right there. Cause like Data's put on the case to like investigate or whatever. Yes. And he's like, I love Sherlock Holmes. And this reminds me of his cases, whatever.
Yes.
And when he says, okay, the only scenario I can think of is this is what happens. And he explains to them what happens and they're all in the ready room and Data and Picard's like looking out of his window, like thinking, and Data's just like, well, protocol dictates, he's thinking to himself, protocol dictates that we should call Starfleet and wait for orders to see what we should do next. But I calculate a 17% chance that Picard will actually do that. So it's like,
yes. And then Picard's like, red alert, battle stations, and everybody goes, whoop, 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 and they go running off to their battle stations immediately.
You're like, Picard's not doing that. He's not calling Starfleet for Jack. He's not going to let them get 1 inch further through that neutral zone. He's going to catch them. And he's like, warp 8, let's go.
Yes, he really is. And now they realize that the Romulan ship transported the ambassador off the Enterprise and made it look like an accident. So when they confront the Romulans, I love that the Romulan did the Santa thing that you do. I'm not going to flat out lie to you. I'll just sort of tell a slightly different version of the truth. So they say, you have T'Pel hostage. And the Romulan is like, there are no hostages aboard this ship, which is true because T'Pel isn't a Vulcan ambassador. She's a Romulan spy. I was there it is. There it is.
And it's so great too, because before she comes out as a spy, another Romulan ship decloaks on the side. And you're like,
and a third one is on its way.
Yeah,
it's like,
they're like, dang. Yeah, you're like, there's 2 ships to 1. And we already know that the Enterprise is equally matched with the Romulan ship, except for Romulans have cloaking technology, which to me means Romulan ships are better. So they're kind of like overmatched already.
Like and a lot better.
The ship decloaks and you're like, uh-oh. And so you're like, Picard, crap. Like, get out of here. But then Picard's just like, we're going to get T'Pel back regardless of what happens, because the Romulans all like, you don't want to start war, do you? Like he's all trying to sweet talk him or whatever.
Yeah.
And Picard's just like, I will do whatever it takes. And Data again is thinking to himself like,
bluffing and poker.
Yeah, talking about poker and bluffing. And it's like, do you trust the man? Do you think the man's bluffing? I don't know. And it's kind of like Data's wondering, is Picard bluffing? Are we all going to die right now?
Yeah.
Because you really don't know with Picard. Like he could be bluffing. He might not be bluffing. And then when he's like, fine, come on out. And you see that T'Pel is totally a spy. Then there's
a Romulan spy. Yeah.
Yeah. Romulan spy. now there's no reason to stay. And then Worf says there's 3 more warbirds on their way. And it's like, okay, 3, like 5 ships. That's we're not gonna.
Time to go.
What are we fighting for? There's nothing to fight for at this point.
Which also, I'm gonna say, I feel like T'Pel was like the worst spy ever, because T'Pel was like, Data, give me some classified information. And Data's like, why do you need to know? And she's like, I don't, never mind. So really all you got was like a nice extended vacation aboard the Enterprise, and you got 0 fucking information. And like, that's that. So
well, no, they got T'Pel from somewhere else. So I'm thinking she was spying wherever she was for a long time. And it's just her coming home. This is just the Enterprise taking her home.
Oh, got it. Okay. Cause I was like, you wanted like navigation and shield info and you didn't get it. So it's like, so T'Pel, what have you got for us? It's like,
nothing.
Funny story about that.
No, and the fact that she is an ambassador with creds means she worked her way up through.
That's true. That's true. I guess they did say like one of Starfleet's most like respected diplomats. It's like, oops. Maybe they really do know Outpost 23's location now.
No, right?
Ethan's like, I could have told you that shit. Like from like episodes
I could have told you so long ago if anyone would have asked me. So
you didn't ask.
Then Picard's just like, fine, get us out of here. And they just like leave like in a huff. And I just thought like, and that's pretty much the episode, but I agree with you that this episode's not great. I didn't despise it, but I think the reason why it wasn't good is because it was 2 different episodes. The A plot and the B plot had absolutely nothing to do with each other whatsoever.
Not at all.
And I think, and I actually like the idea of the Romulan spy. I think that could have been a good episode if we would have just done a whole episode on like more subterfuge and more like something's fishy, but you think it's somebody else, but it turns out all the while it was T'Pel the whole time. You never saw it was T'Pel. That would have been a really good episode. And then the O'Brien wedding, there's no meat on that bone. Like, and so to make a parallel plot would be really hard, because what else do you say about something you don't have anything to say about in the first place?
Yeah. She has cold feet, then she doesn't have cold feet. A couple of people tried to help and it didn't help at all. Period. Like there's nothing else on there. And the fact that, as you said, we just met Keiko this episode, and the first thing she does is call off her wedding and doesn't even want to tell her fiance, which is super shitty and underhanded and like so cowardly. Like I have no time for cowardliness. I don't respect that shit at all. Like I understand you're driven by a bunch of fear, Keiko, but like just not talking to your partner about it. That's not cool. That's not cool at all. And that's just cowardly AF. So I don't have time for that. But yeah, so that's, I think it would have been way more interesting if it was like Deanna and Will are going to get married. And then, right before the wedding, something comes up where they have to cancel it and call it off. And we're totally invested. It's like, oh my God. But with Keiko, we're like, oh my God, what's her face that we just met 5 minutes ago is going to do this thing. Like, so what? I like your hair. Like, that's it. Like, yeah. So I'm really happy to have this episode behind us. I really was like, I will never watch this shit again.
So I feel like season 4 has got a lot of skip worthy episodes.
So far. And we're on episode 11. So it's like a 30% skip rate.
It really is. And it just makes me pine for season 3. I'm so bummed that I didn't know that was the best season while we were in it. Although I did appreciate every episode. I did.
I gotta say, looking back on the episodes, I think that season 3 had the most like incredible episodes, like back to back to back. Yeah, the longest like sequence of great episodes back to back to back for sure. However, I'm a big fan of season 4. I really love season 5. There are so many great episodes. The quality of the episodes overall gets better and better in my opinion, but I do think that season 3 had those like hallmark episodes like Yesterday's Enterprise and stuff like that, where it's like The Offspring. Those are ones that people still talk about, like where Data's Day, who cares?
Yeah.
Even Data doesn't care. He's like, I may or may not send this record to Maddox. And Captain Picard is like, actually, I actively can't let you send this to Maddox because we were doing a whole bunch of, there was some spy shit involved. So like, you can't actually send this to the Daystrom Institute. So just delete this record and let's keep it moving.
Only send the record of the wedding, which no one will care about.
Nobody cares about. Maddox is like, wedding, next. Like,
tell me more about Lore.
Where is his location exactly? Yeah, that's
what was the last place you saw him? Yeah.
But even when we talk about an episode that I don't like, I still have so much fun talking to you about it, Shereese. It is so fun to just talk about this. All right. Well, next week we're talking season 4, episode 12, The Wounded. Can't wait to talk about that one. See you guys next week.
Bye. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.